You're listening to SM Media, the #1 place for exclusive content.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of All Time 11 right here on SM Media. I'm Scott McPike, delighted to be your host as always. Got a very special guest joining me in this episode, joined by the former Newcastle, Motherwell, Hibs and Dundee midfielder Brian Kerr. Brian, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you on the show. Thanks very much for joining me.
Delighted to be here, mate.
How are you doing, all right?
All good. Getting slightly bored now, but getting by.
Nah, definitely. You're back with Motherwell under 18s. How's that kind of been with the lockdown? How kind of difference it been?
Great and stuff. It was obviously the lockdowns made it difficult, but we're doing as much as we can with Zoom calls and all kinds of training sessions that we're offering the boys. We had another little spell just before Christmas, and now we're back to kind of hanging on and waiting for any information so we can get back in and get going again.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk about your career as well. Obviously, you started out you get the big thing at Newcastle, your first club. What was that experience like, playing with some amazing players there?
It was surreal when you look back on it now, and probably even more so when you see the quality of Newcastle's team at that time compared to maybe now. Because I think then Newcastle were flying high. They'd been in European competitions. They were playing the likes of Barcelona and all these teams, and then that was before my time. And then when I get involved, they were still challenging at the top end of the league. But to see kind of over the last 5 or 6 years how it's going, it's been disappointing because when we were there, you felt Newcastle were just going to go, forward and on to bigger and better things. So, what a place, what an experience. Played with some unbelievable players, played with some unbelievable managers as well. So, I don't think there was a better place to kind of kickstart my career than there.
Brilliant. You also had a couple of loan spells as well. You went to Livingston, Coventry, but at your time at Newcastle, you got a Scotland cap for better votes. What was it like to represent Scotland?
That was amazing. I think any young boy wants to do that at any stage of their career, to play for their country. And I do hear the old Bertie Vogts gave a lot of caps out, and he probably did at times, but then he was a guy that went and found James McFadden, Darren Fletcher, and gave all these guys opportunities. So for all the kind of ones that he gave caps to that potentially people didn't believe deserved it, he found a real new batch of young players that went on and done very well for the country.
Yeah, definitely. You then went on to Motherwell as well. Would you say Motherwell was kind of your best spell of your career? You spent your longest time in your career there, would you say?
Yeah, well, I loved Motherwell. It's just an amazing club. I think for everything about it, you'll hear all the usual sort of people saying family-run club and this, and it's tight and that. And it really is. I think anybody that goes to Motherwell comes away for the club, having loved their time there and felt that. I would be surprised if a lot of people that went to Motherwell didn't say it was one of their best, if not their best time of their career, just because, the feeling you get at the club right away and everybody at the club knows each other, you know from the secretary to the cleaning lady, and that's how tight it is, but everybody's driving in the same direction. And again, we had some successful times here and worked under Terry Butcher at the time, which was an experience in itself, so that was great. Absolutely loved it. Met some great teammates, made some unbelievable mates and friends for future, and it was a brilliant time.
Brilliant. We'll move on to your team. Are you going to go with players you played with or played against in your career?
Played with.
Brilliant. Brilliant. There have been many players that will not be surprised, but we'll look at as well. You got a formation in mind of how you're going to set up?
Yeah, 4-4-2, or you could probably argue 4-2-4 because we're quite attacking wide area. So
brilliant. We'll make a wee start. We'll start off with your goalkeeper. Who you got between the sticks?
Goalkeeper was a real tough one because there's been a few. To name a few: Rab Douglas, Craig Gordon, Shea Given, and I'm going to just go for Alan Mcgregor, who I played with at Scotland under 21s.
Yeah.
Who I think when you're looking at his performances now at the age that he's at, and the way he plays, his interview last week was unbelievable. To see a passion in that for the game. I know the reasons he's probably so passionate, but I think when you see what he does, and even in a great Rangers side, they're doing very well and flying high. He's been called upon quite a few times already this season, and and at any time he has been called about, he's answered the question. So he's been excellent, and he was always like that as a young boy. He was under 21s. He had the same passion and drive and winning mentality then. And you knew he was probably going to go into bigger and better things, and he's proved that he has, and he's proven that he might just stop a big season for a certain club right now.
Yeah, definitely. Could agree more. We'll move on to your defence. We'll start off with your right back. Who have you got in there?
Right back was a tough one. I went between quite a few, and again it was 2 or 3 Newcastle players at the time. Warren Barton, Aaron Hughes, Andy Griffin were all players that I played with there. I think I go with Aaron Hughes probably because I played with him more. When you look at his career, I think defensively what you want is players that are pretty much consistent. You know what you're getting for them week in, week out, and he was that kind of player. He was a bit he could play right across the back. He played left back, centre half, right back. Played for Newcastle for a number of years and made a lot of caps for Northern Ireland. So I think Aaron Hughes just jumps in ahead of a couple in that position.
And how important was the likes of Aaron Hughes for you, experience wise? Like were they kind of good with you when you were coming in?
They were great, and Aaron was. I mean, he was a few years older than us, but he just that kind of gave us the wee bit between our teeth to say, younger boys are given opportunities. When we were 15, 16, I think Aaron was just breaking in, and that kind of, you thought, what, there's an opportunity here. There's young boys getting chances. Although it was a massive club and they were flying high, they were still willing to give some opportunities to younger boys, and I think he was one that we looked upon. And then when we eventually, myself and Stevie and Gary Cowell and these boys managed to get in and about the first team group, then he was one that we kind of in that group of ourselves, him, Andy Griffin, some of the younger ones that just kind of got into the team. So he was great for us.
Brilliant. We'll go to the other side. We'll go to left back. Left back
is a good mate, but one of the most consistent players I would see that I've ever played with, I think. Stevie Hamel.
Mm-hmm.
And for some maybe surprising, but I think Stevie was always a 7 or 8 out of 10, no matter what game. On a bad game he was a 7 or 8 out of 10. Every single week you get the same hang out of him. Great player, gave everything he had, played for Motherwell for obviously a number of years, and just done his job unbelievably well every single week. And I genuinely mean that when I say that. I think he was the most consistent player I ever played with in my career.
Brilliant. What was it like? See that Motherwell team, obviously, like a really consistent back line of like Hamel, Cragen as well. Were they really good in the dressing room as well?
They were brilliant in the dressing room, and I think that is always something that Motherwell kind of thrives at selling. Every year I think what they needed, or what they always had, was a group of boys that had been at the club and knew the club for a number of years. They've lost that to an extent over the last maybe year or two. There's quite a lot of boys coming in for down south and the lower leagues of England. But I think then when you look at it, a lot of these younger boys, Faddy come through, Stevie come through, Piero come through, David Clarkson come through. So there was a number of boys that knew Motherwell inside out and had come through. Craigs had been there for a number of years, and pretty much all the team at that time. You think of Marty Corrigan and all these boys, they'd all been there for a number of years. It was a team that had been together, and that obviously showed on the pitch because we got results and we were pretty consistent at the time.
Brilliant. We'll move into centre back. We'll start off first of all with your left-sided centre back.
Left-sided centre back, probably for me, could have been the best player, one of the best players in Europe, if not the world, if he wasn't injured as much. Jonathan Woodgate.
Mm-hmm.
He was unbelievable, an unbelievable football player, and I think at the time he had that bit of aggressive side. But he was coming through where, you started looking at centre halves coming out and playing and being good on the ball. And he had that, hence the reason he got the move to Real Madrid. But I think injuries hampered him a lot. And that
Do you think that's what it was at Real Madrid, yeah?
I think injuries were certainly the thing that caused him the problems, because there is absolutely no doubt his quality was unbelievable. You could tell he came to Newcastle, you knew right away, listen, he's even ahead of this level. And as I said, he went on to Real Madrid and injuries hampered that, but he was also a great guy to have a bit of place. He was always right on top of the jokes and the carry on that went on. He was always certainly one of the guys involved in that. So a great guy to have in the place, but obviously had the quality to back it up as well.
Yeah, definitely. We'll finish off your defence with your right-sided centre back, who partners Jonathan Woodgate.
Another mate, but again for the right reasons. He's in Gary Caldwell.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard him mentioned a few times, and actually in Teams 11, do you know what? He's probably a player's player more than anything. Any supporters player of the year, he's never probably in it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you gave 11 players an opportunity to pick a player of the year, then he would be in a lot of teams, because he's a born leader. His mental strength is unbelievable, no matter what he does. I've seen him obviously being at Celtic and getting pelters at times off supporters, and just keeps going. Nothing phases him. He keeps going, keeps getting through it, and had a very successful time at Celtic, although some people maybe disagree with that. And then he goes to Wigan, and again, they win the FA Cup, and they manage there in the Premier League and that. And to do that, you've got to be a very good player, and you've got to have that drive and determination that he certainly had, because when he was younger, at 17, 18, he knew that there was deficiencies that had to get better.
Yeah.
And he just did that thing in his head, I'll work at everything I have to get to the top, and eventually managed it. And that wasn't through just luck or anything, that was through hard work that he put in through the years.
Definitely brilliant defence so far. We'll touch a bit on your career a bit as well. Well, obviously after Motherwell, you'd spells at Hibs and Inverness and Dundee. Like, what was your kind of highlights for those 3 spells? Obviously we'll touch on why you left Dundee later on, but what was the kind of highlights for those 3 spells?
I think going to Hibs, I felt at the time, there's an opportunity here to work with John Collins, who I thought was a massive name, having come up to obviously Scotland, or having seen Scotland in a big competition that many didn't. John Collins was a massive part of that. And Tommy Craig, who was an ex-coach of mine at Newcastle, was obviously assistant manager. So I felt that was a good opportunity, good to learn from 2 great coaches and obviously great players as well. So I wanted to go there and give that a go, and I did. And for 6 months, that was going absolutely brilliant. We were sitting, I think, second in the league. We were flying high, and then I'm sure it was just before Christmas, or possibly just after. John actually went into a board meeting. We just a kind of general chit chat, and came out, and training get stopped after about half an hour. We get told to go and get changed, and it was a bit baffling. And then before you know it, he had resigned or stepped away from his position. And from there, it kind of started to go downhill, because after my debut, I scored against Hearts. It was my first game for Hibs in the league. Scored against Hearts. We won 1-0 at Tynecastle, and you probably think at that time, I've probably peaked too early, and that probably eventually went to actually as it looks. I did probably peak too early, because that goal and being obviously a bit of a kind of hero or cult hero at the time for that wee bit of spell, and then it gradually went downhill, and Mcfadden come in and had his own ideas and freshened things up, and it ended up quite disappointing how it went there. But for such a promising start, it kind of hanged away a wee bit, and then from there, had a bit of a spell at Inverness again with Terry, who I absolutely loved working with. Great manager and great man manager. He was brilliant. And actually, thinking back on it, Bobby, who was a massive man at Newcastle and great coach there.
Yeah.
Terry had obviously worked with Ipswich and stuff, so you could see that that had rubbed off on him, what to be and how to act. And he was great to work with. Spell there was okay, and then went to Dundee, and again everything was flying high and looking great. We had an unbelievable season. We were doing great, and I don't know if maybe I've got a curse of managers, because Jockey Scott ended up losing his job when he was top of the league, and it was baffling at times as well. But we know the guys who make the decisions. Unfortunately, we just do the bit on the pitch.
Yeah, obviously you left after your contract was terminated with administration. Just how bad a time was that at Dundee, for you personally?
I think it was a tough one. You didn't foresee it coming. We were all led to believe that Dundee were, financially in a great position, and everything was great, and they were striving for bigger and better things, wanted to get back to the Premier League at the times, and everything like that. So we didn't see it coming, and then started hearing bits and pieces and information out, and it was like, oh no. And then when you get told, listen, that's it, there's nothing we can do, you're paid off. And it's a tough one, because at the time, you start, when you're that wee bit older, you've got family and kids and wives and whatever to look after and bills to pay. And when that happens to you, it's, at that time, and you're almost like, for the first couple of days, it doesn't hit. It's not till a couple of weeks later you actually start thinking, here, what's going to happen? What we've got to do here? And you're in a real situation. And then Fraser Wisher and the PFA were excellent for us, to be fair. They worked very, very hard behind the scenes and managed to get pull things together, and eventually, we get kind of paid a good chunk of our money or whatever, and it was okay at that. But for that time, it was really difficult, and it was difficult also to get back in, because you're getting older. Teams are obviously, they're not spending the money the same. You don't know if you really want to go to that part-time because all you've knew is full-time football, and there's decisions to be made. What do you then do? Do you go and start working and play part-time? So it then becomes a real life-changing experience because what is next? All you ever knew is full-time football, and this gets through upon you, and decisions have got to be made. Like I said, there's things to be paid and people to look after, and decisions then become crucial to not just your football career or that, but your life career going forward.
Yeah, definitely. We'll go into your midfield. We'll go back to your team. We'll go with the midfield. We'll start off with your left-sided centre midfielder. Who you got in there?
Gary Speed.
Brilliant.
Unbelievable football player. Just epitomises everything you want to see, I think, in a young boy now. Just off the pitch, on the pitch, unbelievable professional. Gave everything every day, never got him any other way, just 100%. And that came across in his performances on the pitch as well. But even as a young midfielder and the way he kind of looked after us boys, there was a few years at the time, and he helped us along and gave us little tips on how to how to get better and how to work on our game. And he was amazing. And as I say, everything he done, and I think the team get built round about kind of him and Alan Shearer and these kind of guys at the time. But he was like some player. One of the best that I've ever came across in terms of the full package, not just on the pitch but off it and everything. So he was very, very good.
Brilliant. We'll move on to the other side, a centre midfield. Who's on the right hand side?
This is a real tough one because a number of players here for a number of reasons should be in this, and I'm going to go for Gary Mccaster.
Brilliant.
I played with him at Coventry.
Yeah,
he was a player manager, and he was older, probably didn't have the legs, and maybe that's why he loaned a couple of his younger boys out to do his running for him and still allowed him. But his quality was unquestionable. He's still how intelligent he was in the ball and the way he passed the ball and the way he held his shell, and his body language on the pitch. He just looked confident all the time. As I say, his quality, his set pieces, how he played the game, how he passed the ball was just great. And again, another player, different mould to Gary Speed, but another player that you look at and go, you want to try and take bits of that and put it in your own game. And it was great working alongside them. But as I say, I didn't really see his hard working side. I feel like that was our job to give him the ball and let him do the bit. And to be fair, he done it, so I didn't mind that.
Brilliant. Left wing, who's in there?
Left wing is James Mcfadden.
Brilliant.
So we're an all Motherwell left hand side here. Again, another player that he was different to what you get now because he was a real off the cuff player. James just played the game and played with freedom, and you're not seeing as much of that now. And he was a joy to watch. He got frustrating at times, there's no doubt about it, because he would try things and lose the ball, but because he was so good and he would beat men and score unbelievable goals and create chances and that, he didn't mind him losing the ball a few times, but what he did was he drove you up the pitch. He created chances. He was exciting for supporters. He was exciting to be in a team with, because you knew that when he got the ball, he was going to light the place up, and that's what he did time after time for club, for country, and then goes down to England and does the same and becomes a bit of a hero down at Everton as well. So that just shows you, how good James really was, and he was great. I played with him sort of briefly at the under-21s. He just left Motherwell when I got there, but I knew him well for the 21s and that. And as I say, it would have been great to play with him a bit longer, but brilliant to play with. And another one that pretty much all these guys that I've picked, they're not just great on the pitch, off the pitch as well. They're good guys that have got good ways about them. They know when to have fun. They can have fun, which is sometimes, I think, in this new day and age, a lot of players don't really know how to do that, or probably do it in the right way or right manner, I suppose. But nah, he was excellent.
Brilliant. We'll move on to your final midfield position. Who you got in right wing?
Yeah, this is another tough one. This right side's done me in a wee bit, actually. I'm totally split here between Solano and Kieran Dyer.
Right, okay.
And I think I'll go with Kieran Dyer just because of his pace, how direct he was, what he offered, and again, could have been anything. Kieran Dyer, he was obviously, he came with a bit of a off the field kind of reputation. But that didn't obviously faze him. He came to Newcastle, and to be fair to Bobby Robson, he got the best out of him.
Yeah.
He was excellent for him, which he did with a number of players that came with challenges. Titus Bramble came with challenges. Craig Bellamy came with challenges, and Bobby just knew how to deal with these guys, and that was testament to his man management. But Kieran Dyer was an unbelievable football player. Another one who lit up the stadium when he got on the ball, because so direct, could dribble, could beat men, could score goals, could create goals. So he was unbelievable. Probably played more of a central player, but it's hard to squeeze him in, and I've just kind of found him a space here, to be fair.
Brilliant. We'll touch a bit on your when you get into coaching. Obviously, you finish your playing career at both, and then you get into Albion Rovers as number 2 to Darren Young. We've had Darren in the show, and he talks well about his time at Albion Rovers. How much did you enjoy being there with Darren?
I loved Darren. I loved Albion Rovers. I thought it was excellent. Loved my time there. I actually started. I was briefly in the Motherwell Academy, and I remember Tony McMahon saying to me, "There's an opportunity here with under 20s." They had an under 20s, or they were starting and creating an under 20 side at Albion Rovers, and he said, "There's no money, there's no finances, there's no wages, but it's a challenge, and it's a little project. Would you want to take it on?" And I mean, at Motherwell, I was getting paid a bit of expenses and what, and you think there's maybe an opportunity and a pathway there, but I think the project and challenge, I think, quite excited me, and I thought, you know what, I'll have this a wee go. And it was just really scraping the lower leagues and going to teams like Dumbarton and all these teams, and any boys that are letting go at under 18s and saying, we'd be interested in giving you a pathway and an opportunity. And from that team, we picked up a number of great young players. Connor Shields being probably one of the most recent that's kind of starting to now come on the scene and prove, his real worth. He was I think the main one for that team at the time that's really kicked on, and that was just from local boys clubs and stuff. And at the time, I think he was maybe 17, 18, and we'd brought him in, and he wasn't getting an opportunity, so he'd been he'd got through, he'd been left for the system, really. He hadn't managed to get through that academy level early and been playing boys club, and we managed to pick him up, and he's now thriving in his opportunities now. But that challenge was great for me, and it put me in great stead, because I think, as anybody knows, Albion Rovers haven't got the most money. Finances are really poor. Facilities aren't particularly great, but you just learn to deal with what you've got, and it puts you in great, stands you in great stead for your career going forward, because for all the challenges, things is going to other clubs seem that bit easier. When you start to see training grounds and you start to see a wee bit extra money, and you've got analysis stuff, and there you almost become the analysis, the physio, the coach, the manager, the chairman at times making big decisions, and even, I mean, there's times where you're scraping snow off the pitch and everything, so you become ground. I think for 4 weeks in pre-season, I actually almost became the assistant to our groundsman there, because I was so concerned about getting good players in. And then the first thing all of them said to me was, "I don't know if I could play in that pitch every week." So I thought, the first thing I better do is try and make the pitch as good as it possibly can. So I've done everything there to try and, battle away and help the groundsman as best possible to try and get a decent surface, or as good a surface could have been at the time.
Brilliant. You obviously, after Darren leaves, you get in and take the job as manager. Like, how did you find that step up, and what was your first experience like in management?
I think you take that job, or I was offered the job, and you're obviously jumping in, you're desperate, you want an opportunity, and you get that chance, you say, "I'd love that, definitely, I would take this, no problem at all." So went in, but you go in thinking you're prepared and ready for all the eventualities, and you're actually nowhere near it. And I went in with all the, looking at it now, how prepared the man now as a coach and as hopefully a potential manager going forward, to then is like night and day. There was no real game plan, game model, real idea of how I wanted to play. I had a basic system that I wanted to play, and a shape, and then what I tried to do was obviously, sign players that fitted into that idea. And to be fair, if you look back on it, our actual probably first 13, 14 starting players, or sort of nucleus of our main squad, there was some great players who played in the lower leagues, and that showed over the first 10 games or so. the team was playing very, very well. We were winning games. I think we were sitting second in the league. We beat Alloa something like 5-2. We beat Queen's Park 5-1. I'm trying to think of some of the other games. We went through a number of games where you're thinking, we're flying, we've got a right chance here. And to be fair with the team we did have, when you look at it on paper, Scotty McLaughlin, Jason Marr, Ross Perry, Sean Higgins, Alan Troughton, Graham Holmes, all players that play in the lower leagues, but with real quality. And when things were going well, they were absolutely brilliant. In some of the games we played, and some of the opposition managers couldn't believe that Albion Rovers were playing the way they were playing.
Yeah.
And said that at the time, and that proved we won. I won Manager of the Month, but that wasn't me. That was the team, because they were absolutely frightening at the time and doing unbelievably well. And like I say, as the season goes longer and longer, and you start losing games, and it becomes difficult. You don't really know. You know how to try and change things, but you've never experienced these situations before, and how to pick players up, how to really manage players and get the best out of them. When it's all going well, it's easy. When things start to go wrong, how do you fix it, and how do you make the changes? And that was something that I probably lacked in, and something I regret now. I mean, I was never probably got to be prepared for it, but now I feel a much better position, and a much better, as I say, coach and manager, hopefully going forward, that I can implement my style, and I'm prepared for quite a lot of eventualities. And what I do give is I thank Albion Rovers a lot for the opportunity, and sort of putting me on the map as a young coach manager at the time.
Brilliant. Obviously, you had a wee spell at East Kilbride, then you reunite with your old pal Gary Caldwell at Partick Thistle. What did you were you surprised that it didn't work out with Partick Thistle? Because when Gary Caldwell was when you went in there, it was a massive coup for Partick to get somebody like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were surprised when we went in. We weren't surprised that things weren't going well. There seemed to be a sort of culture in there that almost losing became normal. Was the norm, like losing games, and everybody seemed, on their backs. We were picking people up left, right, and centre, and constantly trying to drive people forward. And we knew at that point, this job's going to be harder than expected. So we were a few games in, and we knew there was going to be big changes, and we actually pinpointed January being the turning point. We knew how it was going to be this early spell, and we pinpointed January's signings. We made a lot of moves early, and what we were trying to do, and how we were trying to do things, and what the shape was going to look like, and what the team was going to look like, and made I think we got something like 8 out, or was it 9 or 10 out and 8 in. And eventually what we've done was we get real seasoned pros in, like Stephen Anderson and boys like that, and then a wee bit later in the window, or just after the window, Scott McDonald and these kind of guys.
Yeah. And
they were the difference in, in obviously going and keeping the Partick Thistle in the league, and then eventually finishing pretty safe anyway. But we just needed boys that knew how to drive teams forward, dig teams out. There was a sort of niceness about the place, and like we said, Stephen Anderson comes in and drags people over the line. Scott McDonald comes in and drags people over the line, and that's what we required. Boys that weren't going to just say the right things, that weren't going to just train the right way, but on a Saturday for the 90 minutes, we're going to drag a team forward and make sure that at the end of the game we were celebrating, and not obviously going in and saying, "Oh, no, another one." We need to look over our shoulders again. So, and eventually we implement. We try to do it, but the challenge for us was that we always felt we were battling a lot of things, and there was big decisions made. I think there's no getting away from the fact Chris Doolan was a decision that a lot of people questioned, and Chris Erskine's the same, another decision that a lot of people questioned. Not that we felt at any point, they were bad players, or at any point, just felt that at the time Partick Thistle needed a change, and the club needed something fresh and new. And what we had seen over the little spell, not anything that they had done before, because they had been unbelievable players, and still are probably, in terms of what they offer. But we just felt we wanted something different at the time, and we didn't feel, we were getting what we needed. And Scott McDonald eventually came in and filled Chris Doolan's area, and and the decision was kind of vilified with his quality doing what he'd done.
Yeah.
But then our challenge again was, see that we got a group in then. We lost Scott McDonald because he was wanting to go and, obviously went to Australia and stuff. Stephen Anderson was getting older, so we had to then have another revamp.
Aye.
So in the time there, we go in with a team, we revamp it in January, change it all, and then in the summer we then had to do another changeover. So we were having to then put our points across, our coaching ways, our cultures, our values to this new group again. And it didn't start particularly well. 3 or 4 games in, we hadn't picked up the points we wanted. But we felt we were still working with a relatively fresh group. And again, we were fighting a lot of battles, not on the pitch, but off it as well, because there was challenges, as I think, as well documented of what was going on behind the scenes. And that was a challenge in itself.
Yeah, definitely. We'll finish up with your team. We'll start with your first striker. Who have you got on the left-hand side?
Alan Shearer. I think it's
no surprise there.
I think it was probably one of the easiest picks in my team, to be fair. Again, an unbelievable football player that didn't just get that way through chance. You know, when you see him day in, day out, and you watch him in training, he was always practicing. From the minute he went out to the minute he went back in, and he had these the way he done things. You know, if he missed a chance in the last small-sided game of training, and the manager blew up to go in, the goalkeepers weren't allowed to go in because Alan Shearer had to walk off the training ground having scored his last shot, and it was just a mental thing for him. But it just shows even back then when we probably weren't going on so much about psychology and all these things that we do now, that in his head he thought, my last shot in this training ground's a goal, so when I go home I'm comfortable, and when I come back in tomorrow morning I know that my last shot I scored. And that happened time after time with him. And when you take small things like that off a professional Alan Shearer and you see what he does over his career, and again, probably the biggest thing for him is that he didn't win the things that he probably wanted to win the career, or he didn't win something with Newcastle. I think that would have been the ultimate goal for him. As I say, the standards for any young player to go and watch and see and learn off were unbelievable. And I used to always remember seeing him taking the free kicks and penalties and hitting his shots, and they would always seem to fly in the top corner. You'd think, how do you get that way where every shot you hit hits the top corner? And his actually wasn't through, because I'm sure when I hit shots when I was playing, I just hit it and thought, hopefully that's going near the goals. He hit it and I actually thought, I'm going for that top corner, and and that's why it probably hurt there more so than anything. But that was through hours and hours and days of practice, to be fair.
Brilliant. Who partners Alan Shearer?
This one's not right side because he's an unbelievable career, but Scott McDonald.
Yeah.
Scott McDonald for me, unbelievable career. One of the hardest players to play with and work with I've ever came across.
How that?
He's the biggest moaner in football, not Scottish football, in football, but probably just because his standards were so high.
Yeah.
He wanted to win. He was a winner, and you seen that for an early time in meeting Scott when I first came to Motherwell, and he just came down actually for Dundee United, and he was playing there, and he wasn't at that time probably expected, or people didn't see him doing what he done. Again, another boy that worked hard at his game, but just there's no doubt the helicopter Sunday one was the one that really put him on to bigger and better things almost. But he just had that way about him. You knew he had that cockiness, he had that sort of arrogance, but in the right way, in the best possible way. He had it. Again, another one that backed it up by putting the ball in the net. He would wind defenders up, he would wind his own teammates up, he would wind managers, his manager and the opposition manager up. But he would come off the game with a couple of goals, and that would be him happy. And again, another boy that off the pitch was brilliant, but on it just for 90 minutes would not stop moaning. And it was actually weird because when he then came back to Partick Thistle and we were coaching him, it was a different boy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he'd watched these videos and thought, I'm a moany little shit, I better change here. I think actually for what we needed him for, we couldn't have had the old Scott McDonald going into that dressing room at the time, because boys would have struggled to deal with him. He needed, he had to have egos run about Scotty, because he was quite a big one and would give that off. And at that time, that Partick Thistle dressing room was quite broken and naive and nervous, and he came in instead of being the old Scott McDonald, which we were a bit concerned about. He was a Scott McDonald which was a real new. He set the standards, he set example in the gym, on the pitch, off the pitch. he helped the young boys like Sir Aidan Fitzpatrick and all these boys, and helped all of them, and he became a real asset, not just for his goals and what he'd done for us on the pitch, but off it as well. He was excellent, and I think probably Scott now is looking at the coaching management side as well, and he's already changed himself into what he needs to start looking at. You can see that, and he was a joy to play with, even though he was a little money shit. But as a player to coach him, he was absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure whoever's got him now, the manager that's got him now, will be loving working with him. But I think going forward, when he goes into his coaching side of things, which I'm sure he does want to do, in fact he does want to do, you can see that he's already preparing himself for that, because he's a change boy, certainly.
Brilliant. Really good team, really good team. Is there any players that just miss out that you want to give a wee mention to?
There's a few. I actually thought about this last night. I thought I'd like to do a Scottish one and a kind of career one, because there's probably a number of players you could mention. I mean, there's boys like Guillaume Bouzlin at Hibs.
Yeah.
Was an unbelievable football player, and probably doesn't get he got credit, but in terms of if he played at Celtic or Rangers or something, the credit he'd have got, or he would have really seen how good he was. And he was an unbelievable football player, and the quality was unbelievable. And anybody that's played with him will mention his name because he, what they see.
Yeah.
And I think, with all due respect to Hibs, he was better and bigger than that, and probably should have went to bigger and better things in terms of, I think could have played for him, no problem. But he did go down south. I think he went to Coventry stuff, didn't he? And
yeah, he did. Am I right in saying everybody thought he was lazy?
I think they thought he was. There was that wasn't for players, to be fair. That was almost for other people, or maybe press. I think more than anything, because he didn't feel he was lazy in the pitch. He had a lazy body language, almost like a relaxed more than anything. Because he was so good when he got the ball, almost like the ball, and then he was away for three men. But there was a number of players in Zamama, and that was there at the time as well, and they were all the same. Gary Harkins is probably another player that Scotland a lot mention, and he was unbelievable as well. That got me fitter playing beside Gary Harkins, to be fair, because he was quite lazy, and you had to do an extra 5k in a game for him so that he could be on the ball for that way. But again, another player that he would go and score goals, create chances, and win games, so you don't mind doing that extra bit of work when you've got a player like him that's going to win games for you. And he was great. He was an absolute diamond on the pitch and off it, to be fair, because if you speak to anybody about Gary, you want him in your changing rooms. And again, another boy we brought back to Partick Thistle, and more so when Gary was getting to the end, we knew he could offer things. But when you've got a guy like him that can galvanise your dressing room, he was a massive part to play as well in that last 4 or 5 months at Thistle, to then try and change the ways and the mentality in the dressing room, and did that very, very well. And he was excellent and contributed on the pitch as well when called upon. So he was another one. John Kennedy is one I've got here, which I played with briefly to 21s, and a bad injury hampered his potential unbelievable career. So there's a number. Lee Griffiths. Lee Griffiths is a boy that you would just love to try and get inside his head, because the quality's unquestionable.
Yeah.
But for a young age, having played alongside him at Dundee, there was so much in his head off the pitch, and so much carry on, that what an unbelievable football player that could really have excelled and has done it. Has had a great career, but could have been so much better for him. We don't know how what happens inside his head, but you just want to try and say, come on, just give us a couple of years of exactly what you are and what you can do. I mean, if he's doing what he's doing with the challenges and the problems he's had, what could he have potentially done? So it shows how good a player he really is, and you never know where he could have got to as well. So.
Brilliant. Just a quick one before we finish up. What's your plans for the future? Are you keen to get back into management if an opportunity comes up?
It's something I think, looking forward, I'd like to do. There's no doubt about that. I think, as I said, I've worked with the academies. I've went to Albion Rovers and learned. I went to East Kilbride and became my own man there, and was really enjoying that, putting that together. And felt at that time I was in a better position because I had learned, as I mentioned earlier there, I'd learned for the Albion Rovers situation. And then the opportunity to go to Partick Thistle was probably something I couldn't turn down. I felt big club, going places, would want to be part of that, and obviously teaming up with an old mate and Gary, felt that it was just right, and didn't work. And listen, we'll make decisions over a career, and some will work, some won't. But going forward, it's something I would definitely like to do. I've spoken about it for a bit of time now. I've prepared myself so much better, as I say. I've got a real plan on what I want to do and who I am, probably more so than anything than anything else, because I don't really know if I knew who I was in terms of coach. Albion Rovers and a wee bit at East Kilbride. Now I feel that I'm in a much better position, to really implement my style and my ideas and have a successful go at it. But that only comes down to opportunities, and you just need to wait and see if they come up.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a real pleasure having you on, Brian. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks very much for doing it.
No, it's been great being here, mate. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Cheers.